right, welcome everyone to the webinar for admitted students. I want to congratulate you for having been admitted. I'm Amale Andraos. I'm the Dean of the School of Architecture, and I'm very happy to be here around the table with Andrés Jaque, who is a professor of practice here at the school and also the director of the MSAAD program. And today I managed to steal some brilliant students away from their kind of studio work to share with you their experience. Min Chen, who is a third year MArch, is here. Max Martin, who is an MSAAD, is here with us today. And we have Valentina Angelucci, who is a dual degree between architecture and historic preservation. Andrés Milos, MSAAD, and Monika Wojnowiak, who is an MArch third year. It's always exciting to have the webinar at this time of the year because, as we were just saying, people are on there somewhat between inside and outside and kind of thinking about what's next at the same moment as you're thinking about entering into that process. So the way this is going to work is we've grouped a number of the questions that you've sent online into sort of larger themes that we'll try to address somewhat informally in conversation. I'll make sure that everybody shares with you their insight, and if there are specific questions that are more precise regarding housing, financial aid, or any of that kind of admission-related information, please don't hesitate to reach out to Dean Smaller or the admissions office, and everybody's there. Stefan Bodeker to enable you to kind of get your answers as soon as possible. So let's get started. So one of the question we often have, and it's of course a fair question, is why GSAPP? Why GSAPP? How are we different from other architecture schools? You know, how is New York rendering us different in terms of our collaborations and you know, the kind of general spirit? And so there's a number of things that I like to say. One is I like to think about the school as the kind of embodiment of density and diversity, as a place where ideas and people from around the world come together, and a place where really we sort of build on a very long legacy. There's a lot of continuity in terms of the education. The program, the architecture program, the Masters of Architecture was one of the first programs in the US to really bring a kind of professional American attitude to a kind of much more European Beaux-Arts attitude. At the same time, I think the school has really led over time the kind of transformation of the disciplines and the practices of architecture. So we're always thinking not about what architecture is, but what it could be. And that sense of questioning, that sense of probing, creates a very different atmosphere. It's a place where students are encouraged to define positions for themselves. You're always sort of exposed to so many different positions. There's a sense of debate in terms of what, you know, architectural practice should be, and a sense of intellectual generosity, a sense that you can think and make architecture in a way that you believe it should be out in the world. And I think that is as much part of the MArch spirit in terms of the curriculum, and as it is the AAD spirit of kind of experimentation, of pushing a set of questions. Of course, there are themes that we engaged in. We're very concerned with issues of environment and climate change. We're very concerned with issues of a kind of global engagement. We think relationally across contexts because we're in New York, a kind of very global city, and we were, you know, very strong on visualization and technology, and that certainly percolates not only in architecture but across other programs. But at the same time, there isn't a claim that there's only one way to do things. And I think that really enables, I think, students to be entrepreneurial in their education, and to kind of sort of try to assemble things in a way that they feel they can take out into the world. Andres, do you agree?
Yeah, no, I totally agree, and I think that is one of the things that makes this place very exciting is that that's happening every day. So I'm looking at everyone that is here convened, and I remember your interventions in the different debates, in the seminars, in the symposiums, in the studios, and basically this is something that for me it's very unique of GSAPP. Like every day, architecture is being reinvented here, and as the dean was saying, it's something that happened in the past. Like a big number of the evolutions in architecture were happening here in the first place. But it's something that we keep doing. And I think that one thing that brings us together is this feeling that our discipline, our field, architecture, is really relevant and is a key player in the making of contemporary times. And that's something that we strongly believe, because we see every day that the work that people are doing here are gaining a voice in the transformation of the world. And that's something that I think has to do with GSAPP. It's in the DNA of the place. Also, I think happens because we're really very strongly connected to New York. That is also a place where many of these discussions are happening for the world. And it's happening also because people are attracted to this way of doing, and it's the students and the faculty that is mobilized that really makes it possible every day. And it's something of an energy and a kind of a sense of urgency that makes this place, in my opinion, very, very, very important and appealing for all of us that we decided at one point to come here.
Do you want to say a few words? And
yes. Oh, wait a minute. I think we're supposed to. Yeah, I just want to. There were like two things I wanted to respond to. The sense of urgency, I think, is a good point, and I think also especially the energy. Like you feel, I think coming here, it was just very obvious that like the faculty cares tremendously about the topics at hand, and is also very encouraging of the students to develop their own opinions. I think that was kind of that was the second response I had to Amale's comment. I think previously, I have an architectural background, and the school that I went to previously, it was not so much encouraging you to, think outside, it sounds like a cliche, but like think outside of the box. Like there was not as much room for that sort of discussion, and I think that's what that definitely caught me by surprise in Core 1, and it was, it became more and more like, I don't want to say, it was really exciting, and then I realized it was just a part of the whole pedagogy, and that was really cool, so, yeah.
Max?
Yeah, I think one of the most important things, I had Andreas as my professor in the fall, and I think one of the key things, the most important things for me at least, was GSAPP gives you the platform to, I think, be any kind of architect you might want to be. I think I have learned a lot about myself in terms of a designer after coming here, just in terms of traditional practice isn't necessarily formulated. It's whatever it is that you want to make it, and I think that the professors here allow you to explore whatever it is that you want to explore, and will be receptive as long as the idea, I think, is strong to you, or you believe in it, or is something that has the ability to change something, or it's less about architecture as just a structure or a building, but it's how that building responds to the environment or the culture or the place. And New York is, I think, a place that allows us to do that. We're able to go to other galleries in the city and talk with other professionals and have the guest lectures that have people that are doing this exact same thing. And I think that that's been really eye-opening.
Also going off what you've said, I've found being here has been such a liberating and exciting experience, because no ideas that you propose are like withheld from you. Everything has the potential to be developed and explored further, and you're encouraged, and you have the facilities to do what it is you want to do and to explore. And as an international student, to the faculty that we have here is great. I had a South African critic, and it's just me and her from South Africa here, but it's great to see the potential that international students have here as well.
What I like about this aspect of being an international, some people think that New York it's a bit too much, but it's not. It's full of international people, so you kind of feel at home with all of them, and I think that correlates with the professors, with the faculty, and with the students. So the energy, not only in the diversity of professors and studios, but the diversity of students within studio, that the discussions that we have there are very powerful, and it's make you think all the way about architecture and your own thoughts put in crisis.
I second all of that, but also kind of the what I really enjoy about the school is kind of the vibrant kind of environment that we get to live in. New York and GSAPP is kind of a great kind of density for this collaboration and this kind of stuff that we can do both through the lectures, the studios. We all just got back from traveling for our studio projects. The dean and all the faculty have really been pushing experimentation and making as a big part of the school, and kind of challenging our notions of what architecture is, or if you're not coming in with a background, kind of introducing a whole new world to kind of what it could be for our future.
So it's good. You don't just listen it, take it from me. But I think it's great to kind of hear of the sense of energy and the sense of openness, and I'm so always thrilled to find that students are finding their own voice. And a lot of the times, I get asked, what if I don't have a background? What if I have a background? And our position is always, within the first semester, you won't even be able to make the difference between those that have a background and those that don't, because there is this tremendous collaboration, between students, and a sense of generosity. And we, of course, have, if people are struggling, we have mentorship programs, etc. But more, it's really like an immersive program. We don't want to put people in buckets, those who have and those who don't have. You're all equal when you start, and you'll find that after a semester, everybody is pretty much in line, just in terms of their skills, but also, their ideas and what they're bringing, whether they're coming with an architecture background or not. They're always bringing something to the table, and that richness is quite, crucial for us. And so, thinking a little bit more specifically about, the actual curriculum itself, the MArch is a 3-year program. It's the first, we like to, in general, I think in the past, architecture education, and you might find that in other schools, was really about studio. Studio was everything. And here, studio is still crucial. But visual studies is incredibly important, and technology and history theory and having a sense of criticality, vis-a-vis all of those aspects of architecture is crucial. And so you'll find that all these different areas are as exciting, almost running in parallel as studio is, and that there is a sense of curating those. With equal importance in terms of visual studies has a position as to the question of representation. History theory has really engaged the question of, how do we teach architectural history today, and whether it's so centered in a kind of European notion, or whether with the student body that we have, it needs to be much more global, and really kind of thinking always in relation. And these things, of course, percolate in studio. The way we're starting to conceptualize the MArch in terms of studio is the 3 first semesters are about architecture and the city. You start on Broadway, you analyze that kind of long diagonal exception in the city, and you end with housing. Here, housing travels. This is even in your 3rd semester, you get to travel But then you come back with your experience and you look at a site in Harlem or in the Bronx and you're thinking relationally, what does it mean housing in Mexico City and that density versus, housing in New York. And so always to think in that sense. And then the 3 other semesters are really starting to be shaped around questions of architecture and environment. And, the last year where we intersect with, the MArch intersects with the AAD in the last 2 semesters, there's up to 18 studios. It's incredibly diverse in terms of the offerings, but there are these kind of larger themes that start to, I think, emerge and create a really interesting conversation. So this year we've hosted Andrés and David Benjamin, who leads the Advanced Studios, hosted a series of conversations around climate at the scale of the building, to look again at practices who are engaging these issues at the scale of their practices. So I would say the curriculum is both quite rigorous but also quite open because of the diversity of offerings within each sequence and within each kind of groupings that we have. Andres, you want to say a few things about the AAD specifically and what summer has become a kind of core, very exciting core for the program?
Yeah, I mean, we're close to have it coming again, and it's a moment that is very unique. Those that are coming to enroll in the AAD will see that the summer is the first of 3 semesters. It's a very intense moment. The school is basically taken by people coming from around the world, super talented people that are convened to discuss what's happening to architecture and what could be a notion of advanced architecture. And that for us means how architecture becomes really relevant in contemporary discussions. And that's something that we're doing by articulating design with criticality and with materiality. These 3 super important columns for us work together. And they work together in a way that basically the decisions that you take when you're designing have a huge, or we're tracking the way they have a huge impact environmentally, socially, economically, politically. So basically, you come here with the experience and your concerns that you put together all these years somewhere else. And then once you're here, basically, we're taking very seriously to make sure that all your concerns translate into capacities for you to design with much more, basically, relevance. And that's something that happens in this cauldron of the summer, in which basically you won't have that much time to do any other things than basically being here, working, discussing the work of others. It's a very intense moment. We structure it in a way that basically you will be being part of courses in which you're discussing the transcalarity of architecture, how architecture, the decisions that you take at the scale of buildings, basically affect much more or issues that are much larger than the actual decision that you're taking, but that helps you basically gain that criticality. We also discuss in New York in a very intense way. We're looking at the way particular pieces of New York are comprising huge complexity, and we're working on folding that, like each one is taking pieces that he or she or they find especially exciting and they work with that, and then you're part of a huge dynamic of delivering and producing projects, and that's something that happens in a kind of environment and ecosystem of discussion that makes the best of your positions and force you also and demands from you really to go much farther in the making of your arguments. That's happening in the summer, and it's kind of an intense way to inject someone in this ecosystem of discussion and criticality, but through design. That's very important. We don't discuss kind of in the air, but we want to be effective, to do things, and that's why design is connected to all this and is in the center in many of these discussions. Then comes, as the dean explained, basically the AD students arrive to the second semester and they get to the whole moment of 18 studios, probably with some of the most interesting people working in the field of architecture, proposing the ideas that they really care about, and basically you can define then your own trajectory. It's not only the studios, but you have visual study courses where basically the way architectural representation enables you to deal with issues that otherwise you could never be able to deal with. It's being forced, and we have here some of the most exciting people working on this field. And then you have history and theory, that for us is something crucial. It's not something that happens in parallel, but it's really what allows you to understand what is the political, the historical, the critical implications of the work that you're doing. And that's happening for 2 semesters, and I must say that it's a super intense experience, and when we see that backwards, it's really something that changes people's expectations, careers, ways of thinking, and more than any other thing, voice. People gain a voice by going through that process.
So speaking about transformation, I wanted maybe to hear from you how studio culture and the program has maybe transformed you or your expectations. I mean, Min, you mentioned a little bit that you didn't expect some of the openness, but more specifically, where do you imagine yourself going, or how did you experience studio culture and the overall sort of collaborative spirit, I hope?
I feel like coming in first year, I had these like latent opinions that I wasn't sure how to articulate. And Andrés mentioned we have a strong history theory program, which I think is really critical in helping students. If the more work you put into it, the more you get out of it, and it's been really beneficial in that, in conjunction with studio, in helping me develop my own voice. And it's hard to articulate. I feel like at this point, I've tapped into something in my brain that I didn't know was there before, and it's like really amazing and exciting, and at the same time I have a better idea of how I want to enter the practice after graduation. And I'm just looking back like at 3 years, I'm like really surprised at the amount of change that has happened. And I think for me, and maybe for most of us, the changes, like it's always a bit unexpected. Like you have some idea of how you're going to grow and develop, and because we all had to write a statement to get here, but really I think most of that is like, I don't know, it just really, I don't know, it was really surprising in like the best possible way, so.
I should probably reread my statement
Yes,
letter.
you should. I should reread mine too.
Yeah. I mean, just to see how closely they align, because you're right. I think that, I don't know, the change is in a way that is unexpected. And I'm an AAD student, so I went through the summer studio, which we really, really needed, I think, to become a part of like the GSAPP community, just because I think it's going to be really different from really where anybody is coming from. I had 5 years of bachelor's and then worked for 2 years and was in the realm of kind of what I thought was architecture, and I think that the summer kind of wakes you up a little bit back into academia and especially back into GSAPP that was really, really important and kind of like a special moment in coming back to the school and coming and being a part of the rest of the program. But in terms of changing, yeah, I really should read that entry letter, because I don't know. You had mentioned the importance of being international here, or the importance of like the community that is around you. But as someone who's from the U.S., it was equally as important, because this community that you're surrounded by really feels like you take New York and you condense it into this building. And like being surrounded by this international culture, I think changed me a lot, because people from all around the world think in completely different ways, and I think that was really important. So I don't know, it might be interesting to look on why and how that changed me, but I think that was kind of cool.
So my undergrad was in architecture as well, and it was very technical, and one of the most exciting things about being at GSAPP is that is our selection of studios. I've managed to take studios that were on cooking, on historic preservation. Now I'm in the MakerGraph studio, and just any interest you may have can be fostered here and nurtured to grow into something bigger. And that's incredibly exciting and liberating, because nowhere else do you have the potential to, or the opportunity to explore so much and in such depth, which is great.
Hi, I'm from AAD, students from AAD, and I think what Andrés just talked about the summer for AAD students. In my case, it was great because the school is empty, only for the AADs probably, and so we kind of managed to get into the building and to this big institution, and that's wonderful. And the classes of Metropolis were wonderful. That you foster the discussion, and when the students go back to studio, they continue having that discussion. So that means that the issues that were discussed are relevant from all over the world. That's why everybody is interested about it. So I think that's very interesting. And the second semester, as you said, so we merged with the MArcs that they have been a long time here, so they have much more experience than us, but it's a very good dynamic. And well, now we're in the last semesters with the views of the future, and that's interesting as well, because we kind of discuss, all of us, what are you going to do in the future? So work in an office, or open your own office, or being a professor, and yeah, there's a very diversity of professions.
So as the dean mentioned, I'm a third-year MArc with these other two ladies here. And I look back at Core 1 my first week, and I was wide-eyed and terrified of what did I just sign up for. And then throughout the semester, as you've mentioned, you kind of are just mixed in with this cool group of people that you've never imagined being able to work with before in such a dense place. And then fostering that over kind of the last 3 years, traveling to places I never imagined I would travel to. I just got back from Moscow. Everybody else here, I think, was also traveling. So not only just inside GSAPP, but kind of the potential to go to different lectures around the city, in the area, but also abroad. And I also think about the professors are super engaging, both with studio projects, our tech studies, visual studies, but also kind of personal endeavors. So I feel like I came into the program kind of unsure yet of where my kind of vision for architecture stood, and unsure if I had a vision, and that's still up for debate, because, you know, architecture learning never ends, but I feel like I have a framework now. I feel more confident kind of with where I want to put my mark, kind of leaving here in the 6 weeks. Oh my God.
I think it's 7.
Seven. Okay, one more week. But I mean, I think, I'm sure you guys agree to a degree. I'm very ready to kind of fly out into the world, but I also am going to be sad to leave because this place is just really awesome. So.
And I'm always sad when the students graduate and then they show up in the summer again, because many start to TA, and actually that's part of my one of my favorite things is that New York does that as well. Because we're in New York, students come back often because they're working in the city. We have an opportunity we offer a lot of TA-ships, both when the students are here, but also even when they graduate, they often come back and they start to assist their favorite professor, or, you know, there's this kind of very organic kind of mentorship, I think, that happens. And for us, that is all part of learning, right? It's just a way to stay involved. And one of the things that you've heard about travel, I mean, I think travel has become so ubiquitous that students, which I love, is that I know that students now choose studios because they really believe in the studio, not because it's going to some exotic place, even though we have a lot of exotic places that are being visited. But it's for us, it's part of the education, because today we live in this kind of global environment, and it's very important to be able to know how to find your kind of footings when you land somewhere. You only have a short time to understand, that context and think about it relationally. That's part of the pedagogy, and so we offer it. As I said already, in the third semester, and then in the 2 last semesters that you're here, there are summer workshops that are an opportunity for interdisciplinary work, whereby students from across the programs can apply, and so it's an opportunity to join forces with planning students or preservation students, urban design, etc., and kind of work together. And that is also, I think, an aspect of the school that is increasingly important, is this kind of dual or at least multidisciplinary approach. There are increasingly dual degree students, such as Valentina, who are feeling like the way they assemble things is not only crucial within their own program, but also in between programs. And even for those who are not engaged in a dual degree program, the breadth of events that are offered both at the school, on campus, conversations, exhibitions, etc., are a way to always expose you to the different scales of the disciplines of the built environment. And that's something that we really are trying to foster quite a bit. And I don't know, Valentina, I mean, we have a joint studio between historic preservation and architecture. We're going to have one again between real estate and architecture. We have one between planning and architecture. And so it's very nice, I think, to find that the disciplines are kind of coming together a little bit. I don't know if you wanted to...
Yeah. So last semester for the joint studio, we traveled to Mexico City, where we got to work on the American embassy there, which is about to be decommissioned, and it was great. It had architecture students and preservation students in it, and it was great to have the 2 groups come together, because we both come with similar intentions but very different ways of achieving what we want to achieve. So I think it was very productive in that we also learned, I'm a Jew, but the others were able to learn so much from each other, and it allows you to think about buildings also again at the scale of the community and the city, and analyze an existing building and how you can react to existing systems and ideas and a community that's different from your own. So yeah, it was really good.
And I think another, you've heard the word density, and you've heard the word New York in a kind of compressed way. And I did want to speak to this notion that, yes, we are in New York, and it's a very kind of interesting environment, but I did want to speak to the sense of collaboration that happens in the open spaces of studio. We've done a lot to renovate the studios, and there is more room, but the sense of openness now is really has become part of the culture, right? That you're not just in your little shell, you're really part of a conversation. We've expanded the makerspace, doubled its size. It's 3,300 square feet with and again here it's not about fetishizing technology but rather sort of finding ways to assemble analog and digital, and in kind of always finding ways to be creative. And so I did want to hear from you how you feel the resources and the spaces of the school are, have served you and your experience.
Well, I'll say from the first year till now, this school, I mean, even in the 3 years I've been here, the Maker Lab has transformed into something that is so cool. It is always full of students. It's never empty. I think Josh Jordan, who's kind of the director of the Maker Lab, has totally embraced, if there's anything you'd want to make or are unsure of making, or, kind of have questions about, he totally engages with that. And also the new studio spaces, the third years have had the opportunity to kind of watch them kind of be totally renovated over the last 3 years, and the space is actually really fun. Speaking to the collaboration, we sit next to another studio, David Benjamin's studio, and we kind of have our collection of plants that we all take care of at our studio desks. And so even because the studios are so close to each other, so it's 18 studios, but you're all in the same room or the same floor, I guess, you get to work closely with the people who are not in your studio but are working
Right.
like next to you, which is great.
Yeah, and I think that the good part of what Monica said is like, because we're into one room, if you decide one studio, it's not that you're going to learn only from that studio, but you're going to learn from all of the studio. You can ask the students, you can go to the reviews, you can go to the classes. It's, I think that's a very important thing, that you can be aware of everything that is happening in the school. And yeah, that's my thing.
I think just building on that also, it's so exciting when you go into other studios and you see the models that people have built and the drawings that they've done, and you may not have any idea about what is going on, but it's so inspiring to see the range and just the quantity of work that happens.
Yeah, I sit next to your studio, and there's definitely pieces of your studio that I think are finding their way into my project. I don't know, they're doing lots of book making, and I find myself like making books too. I don't know, and like really interesting materials.
Yeah.
But that's definitely true. And I think what was important for me is that there's no distinct like making style. Like some schools like only 3D print, or only make things out of basswood or something, or I don't know. Here, like you guys are using resin and wood, and we're using like foam and all sorts of different kind of materials, and I don't know. I found that to be kind of important when I was looking for schools. Like, there's no like one style; it can be whatever you want it to be.
So I'm in Monica's studio, but I sit diagonally from Andrés, and it's really fun to hear him and his group and what they're working on like every day. And we were just having a debate on who had the best studio travel. So I think both our studios had a fantastic time. And for me, it's also just really fun to go back into the first and second years studios and see what everybody is making. First year especially is super tactile, and there's never a material that is excluded from that room, and to see how students try to work with it semester after semester has been really cool, especially after you leave first year and you're like, oh, like what are they working on? And I don't know, it's a nice refresher, and to keep kind of going back to those ideas after time. So yeah.
So I think since you're coming close to the end of your time here, I wanted to hear a little bit about how you feel about what's next, or we do have a career service kind of center here. We try to host events, etc., to create a sense of conversation. But at the same time, I know that a lot of those conversations are also organic, because a lot of the faculty that teaches here is also practicing here, or the kinds of more organic sort of professional relationship often are seated at the school. And I wanted to hear if you feel prepared or positive about the future and your aspirations. So.
Well, I actually ran here after finishing a job interview, so things are getting real. But I think the school's done a really good job, especially career services, and Francesca, who's kind of helping us as we prepare to be real big kids after this, has done a really good job. We had a career fair about a month ago. She's also bringing in different firms to interview with us as well. But there's a whole website dedicated to kind of letting us figure out kind of what positions are available, what's out there, and kind of where do we align with. And so kind of as we've woven our way through our semesters here, we kind of start to gain our own thesis about how we feel about architecture, and then kind of coupling that with what's being done in career services and where we're kind of having doors opened for us, and engaging with professors, or working with them outside of studio, or meeting with new people that we've never met before. The school does a really good job of making sure that we're aware of kind of the scene after school.
So in my case, I have a scholarship from my country, so I have to go back. But I asked Francesca for everything, so she even offered to get job in the country where I'm going back. But that's amazing, the net. But I think at the same time, the masters give you some independence to have your own decisions. So from my perspective, I'm more, I feel more like to open my own practice and perhaps teaching.
Yeah, great.
So that's what I mean. So you have so broad the different kind of practices that people want to do, and yeah, that's my view and my experience.
I think one of the things that the school's really good at is building a strong network and community around you while you're here. So now that we're at the stage looking for jobs, we've worked with faculty over the years that are able to also guide us and introduce us to different firms and ways of applying for jobs and where. And the second thing I'd like to add, just as an international student, is that because architecture, and I think the ADs get this benefit too, because it's a STEM degree,
Right.
we get 3 years to work here on our student visa, which is invaluable. Yeah.
I wasn't ready to leave, and so I am going to be
You
a
can
TA
stay. You can,
this
so
summer.
you're going to be a TA. Okay.
Yeah, so I'll be helping with the studio this summer, so I'll, I guess, get to meet some of you. And I don't know, maybe that's something that I didn't expect to want to do, but continuing to help teach or be along, these great professors is an amazing opportunity. And also in terms of being a professional, I think it made me question what that means, actually. Maybe not actually going into a traditional architecture practice, and I'm not sure. But I think that's good. It's not so much that I know what I want to do now, it's that I know that I don't know what I want to do. And I don't know, figure it out.
That sounds good.
So with career services, I think that's something that Amale has really helped build more robustly in our time here. Francesca has been amazing. It's also, it's not just it's the events and also the one-on-one meetings that we are able to schedule with her. And I'm like super grateful that every time I meet, have a career services appointment, it's like she's just been very patient to listen to all my concerns. And then in terms of networking, I've also been juggling interviews during the semester, and I'm surprised that people, GSAPP alum, have reached out and been like, oh, hey, I am interested, or we really like your portfolio, but also I went to Columbia, and I would really love to have a discussion with you, and that's been super cool. And in terms of practice, like, yes, I'm definitely on board with the rest of the students. I want to keep engaging with architecture and academically as much as I'm able to after graduation, be it in the immediate or like long-term future. And also in terms of practice, I think something that we might not have mentioned yet, it's also been really nice to hear how our studio critics and other critics talk about their own practices. We definitely, if they do not talk about it directly with us, they also have other side discussions, and yes, because the building is so small, we are able to hear these conversations, but actually it's like really valuable. And I've also been really lucky to have studio critics in exit interviews give advice about how to pursue, not how, but they've made suggestions on how they could see me pursuing practice after graduating. And I'm like, I feel very grateful for that. I didn't really think I could want to or have the capacity to pursue something more independent, but that's something that's definitely in how you say, I'd like to make that happen if possible. So, thank you.
Well, that's very exciting, and I think that Min, you mentioned your portfolio, and I think that although we don't really have a thesis here, every semester is a kind of thesis in the way that we ask the students to engage and take position and bring something to the questions that are being asked. And if you have an opportunity to see some of the portfolios online of the, all of your portfolios at the end are, unbelievably amazing. And you don't, AED, MARC, again, it becomes the same, but they all have a kind of character, a sense of identity, a sense of questioning, also personality, and it's really rewarding from our side to see that. And that's a kind of first statement, a sort of ground on which you build then a path for you out in the world. So I'm very happy to hear that, already that's kind of bearing fruit. And we have, faculty engages, throughout the years here with this question of the portfolio and the book and the making of a sort of voice through that kind of object, and the debates that we have with the faculty at the end is always really exciting. So I encourage you to kind of take a look. Anyone else wants to add? They are at the end, you're at the beginning, but it's good to see what, or actually the beginning, another beginning. So.
The only thing that I wanted to mention is like, since I've mentioned before, I'm going back to my country. When you mention GSAPP or Colombia, many doors open. And it's a great institution that it's something to think about, that it's there's a guarantee of quality of architecture and of knowledge, that it's world known.
Andrés, last words of wisdom? Or no wisdom?
Or no wisdom. Well, I think what is very exciting, when I've been traveling now to different places, to China, and I've been visiting different schools in Europe as well, all around, and it's very true what you're saying, and it's something that it's not, let's say, just a network of people that know each other, but it's a number of discussions, and the Dean was mentioning this, that keep going. So becoming part of the Columbia community is a way of engaging with the world, engaging with the architecture as something that is critical, that it's relevant, that it's really making changes every day. And I think that's something that keeps us kind of connected. And this trust that you were mentioning, Andrés, I think that comes from the fact that we know that when we find someone that it's working like this, it's kind of forever, and it's a guarantee that things will happen where this kind of attitude happens. And I think that we're part of this, all of us, and hopefully many of you that are there.
So I hope this was informative, and we're really looking forward, I hope, to welcome you either in the summer or in the fall. It's a really great time at the school. We have just amazing students, incredible faculty. Everyone is really deeply committed to this place and to, using it to imagine how we can think about architecture in the world differently. And again, if you have any particular questions, please don't hesitate to email or whatever form you are using these days. I'm not sure, but and we'll be really delighted to see you soon, I hope. So thank you.